This is Mikey Mason, and you're listening to Why We Game.
I'm Brodor, and my guest again is Dave Wallace. We decided to get together and do a 2020 retrospective. Dave was my first interview, and it's been almost exactly 6 months. And so I wanted to check back in with Dave and take the proverbial second bite at the apple. So if you didn't listen to the first interview, Dave Wallace is the OG smog of gaming retail. You would do yourself a great favor to go back and at least listen to what he has to say in that first episode. But if you did, we're going to jump right in and talk about how private equity firms have fucked up the gaming industry, beginning with WotC. So, Dave, when we started, you were telling me, you were getting me all filled in about the variety of things that are going on with WotC. And to my surprise, and just proves that I'm a shitty journalist, I did not know that Wizards of the Coast was facing multiple multi-million-dollar lawsuits from a variety of people.
They have been busy this year. Margaret Weiss and her Dragonlance books, Gale Force 9, and international shipments overseas, they literally just cut them off. They did not hold back and say, well, we're not going to renew. In the middle of a contract, they just stopped and said, no, you're not doing anymore.
So this was not you, it's not you, Gale Force 9, Battlefront Miniatures, whatever. It's not you, Margaret Weiss Productions, have violated your contract.
No.
It's we, WotC, have decided we're just done.
Yes. Couple that with they cut off one of the major distributors from carrying their product. There's speculation, and that's all it is, a speculation, that either they want to release a major new product, for example, Dungeons & Dragons 6 as opposed to 5, or that they're potentially looking to sell WotC. Hasbro's looking to sell WotC to a third party. And in this case, the only people with money to do it and the reason to do it would be private equity firms. People who are looking to make more money down the road.
Let me float just a fresh conspiracy theory that just popped into my head right now. ACD is working with Asmodee, right? And we think. Well, I mean, that's a done deal. That was Gamma 2020. Although that's a done deal.
That was before they were cut off by WotC.
Wow, now here we go. Right. So WotC says to ACD, we're not selling you product anymore. Which, let me put a pin in the justification why WotC made this decision, because I don't know. But does this benefit Asmodee? I think it does in two fashions. One, it devalues ACD and makes it a less expensive commodity or product to purchase for my private equity firm. But also, it puts me in a position of saying, oh, you won't sell to ACD. Will you sell to Asmodee? Because ACD doesn't exist anymore. We bought them. Oh, and by the way, here is our bid for WotC. We, Asmodee, and private equity firm that owns Asmodee, would also like to own Dungeons & Dragons.
Certainly anything is possible. We won't know until later. The equity firm is always looking to improve their holdings, and by moving into distribution, not just management, they increase the value of what they could offer to sell to someone else. If picking up WotC improved the reason for moving into distribution, yeah, it could all tie together. But again, none of us know. We're just watching.
To your knowledge, and obviously, Dave, you don't represent either ACD, Asmodee, WotC, etc. Why do you think WotC told ACD to bugger off?
If you look at the paperwork, originally they said that ACD owed them a lot of money. And part of what happened was ACD paid that money back. They gave millions of dollars to WotC for money that was owed. The suggestion from the paperwork was that WotC has reason to be unhappy with them, but nothing was spelled out. They didn't say you owe us $2 million or you're falling behind or you failed to carry the product properly. They just expressed their dissatisfaction and wanted to stop doing business with ACD. So it took several years for the lawsuit. Most people didn't know it was even taking place, but then literally it was okay, Monday everything was fine, and Tuesday, no, they can't have the product from this day forward, and we're not talking about it and we're not considering it. And ACD's approach was, look, you represent 30% of what we sell, and a lot of what we sell otherwise is because people are coming to us to buy your product. What's this going to do to us? Are we going to be able to stay open? And basically the judge said, well, that's your problem in your state. WotC isn't doing anything wrong here, so we're going to go ahead and grant it. But there's been silence since then. I mean, ACD is still there. They're still in business. They're supposed to be the only distributor carrying Asmodee product, but neither Asmodee or ACD, to my knowledge, has made any kind of a statement whatsoever. So we don't know. It still makes sense. Everybody within the industry, any legitimate businessman, not just a fan within the industry, no, I'd love to find a private equity firm that wants to buy me. They spend a whole lot more money, and they bring in a whole lot more money.
There's no money in retail anymore. There's no in brick and mortar retail. It's not the way to go. And if you are going to go that way, then we're all going to go to Amazon for our gaming, and Jeff Bezos and Amazon are just going to soak everything up, right?
Yes, but you're thinking retail. They're not thinking retail. They're thinking Walking Dead and Star Wars. Those are companies. Those are thoughts that have huge amounts of money behind them. So I don't want to sell your game. I don't do that for a living as a private equity firm. That doesn't matter to them. But I want to own the rights to your characters. So WotC still has the single largest, best respected role-playing game in the country, and they have the best card game in the country with Magic. So between D&D and Magic, how many private equity firms would look at those two things, look at distribution, and say, hey, we can corner the market here, we can dictate what's happening, and by doing so, we can then go look for another private equity firm that wants to pay us billions more than we paid.
I get what you're saying, but last time you and I had discussed vertical integration, and I am of the opinion that why not own both? Why not own the intellectual property and the avenues at which you get the product from that intellectual property?
And that's normally how private equity firms work. They don't just buy a company, keep it the same, and go looking for another buyer. They add to the value, and the easiest way to add to the value is vertical. So picking up a distributor makes perfect sense. The only thing that hasn't happened yet is a private equity firm looking at retail and saying, look, let's pick up all three parts. It's three-tier distribution. Let's own some of all of it.
Well, and Amazon has talked about opening Amazon stores, and I think that's how you penetrate the market, right? Is that you just have an Asmodee store.
Yeah, and Asmodee did the same. They went out and opened a flagship store. Funko with the Popheads did the same thing. They went out and opened their retail flagship store. I think they were all looking to move into retail. I just don't think they have enough knowledge and information to be able to do it on their own yet.
Right. They don't get it, right? And
not really, no.
And we talked about big box stores last time, and I was lamenting how much I dislike them because they're too big, there's too much stuff, and I can't get anybody to help me. And if I actually track down an employee, they generally either don't give a shit about what I want or my question, or they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And you said, well, but that's the way the world is going. Is, bigger is better, fewer employees is better. Those weren't your words, but what you were saying is that that's the direction things are going. Do you think the hobby industry is going to go that way?
I think that I would phrase it a little differently. That's the way some of the world is definitely going, but not all customers are the same. We go back to the argument that why don't we all drive the same car, wear the same clothes, eat the same food, do the same things for entertainment.
But who cares what the consumer thinks when we've not provided them an option?
Well, some of the consumers are more concerned with price. I mean, the less I pay, the more I can get, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they'd be foolish to pay more than they have to. But some of the same customers, yeah, but I like the stores. I like that personal touch. I like somebody helping me out. So I can go online right now and buy a Batman trade paperback, but there are 1,000 trade paperbacks available to me. How do I know which one to buy?
But culturally, do you think that people are changing and that from one generation to the next, the desire for our preferred style of retail is changing?
I think without a doubt, especially when you look at a year with a pandemic in it. But I don't think that means that everything changes. I think that people who were satisfied in 2019 with what they were buying and where they were buying it are now more likely to be picking it up online. And again, not because they prefer to go online, not because they get such great help online, and not even because they save money, but because they're just trying to be safe from the pandemic. The question becomes, once the pandemic passes, will they shift back? Or, no, that's just the way that things are going. They're just, that's how they do things now.
Yeah, well, I believe the cliche is it takes 21 days to form new habits, and we've had months and months of this now. So I wonder what bounce back is going to look like, especially now. I mean, here it is, December 2020. We're very likely going to be swearing in a new president next year. Operation Warp Speed has been successful in terms of generating some vaccines, but conventions are already starting to say, we're not going to be doing this next year, or we're going to try to postpone. I feel like that this is and I hate this fucking expression, but that this is the new normal.
Well, interestingly, take a look at restaurants right now. Look, when the pandemic started up, most of the restaurants basically became food trucks. I mean, they're set in concrete. They can't go anywhere, but they can't bring people in. They can't take care of customers the way they used to. So they tried to survive by curbside carry-out delivery, but they gave up most of their dining rooms. Even with the pandemic past, how many people are going to want to go back to the restaurants the way they did prior to this? So if you had a restaurant that could seat 80 people, but you haven't seen more than 25 people in the last year, why keep paying for a restaurant that can seat 80 people? It doesn't mean you go out of business, but it means that you probably have to shift your business some. So I do think not the new normal, but people have discovered what they need and what they don't need. Now, I strongly suspect there are just as many people out there that, no, I love my local restaurant. I love supporting them. I like local business. I want to support my local shops. And we've seen lots of evidence of that. So for every person that found, what the heck, it's easier to just sit at home and order what I want at midnight, I think there are not just as many. There are still more people out there that want to go by the stores, that want to shop, that want to get the experience and the help. That's why they do this stuff. It's not because they need it to live. It's because it's what they want to do with their lives. So, yes, there will definitely be a new normal. So we go back to, there's no convention season to speak of. Most stores, if they're open, there's no events taking place. Even if we could, if I announced I was going to do an event this weekend and we're going to stop seating people at 200, even if I could pull it off, how much bad publicity and how much bad feelings would I be generating amongst my other customers? So, no, we don't have events taking place. And people coming in and saying, well, when are you going to start doing your events again? Well, it's a real good question. And even if the pandemic is past, does that mean we're going to go back to what we had in 2019 and 2018? Or are those now days of the past? There will still be events, but will they be at that size? Will we be trying to capture that target market any longer? Or have we, just like the restaurants, learned to focus on the retail and get away from the events?
Well, that was actually going to be my question, because last time we spoke, you talked about your philosophy of the fantasy shop as a place where the uninitiated are going to come for their initial education. So is a game space, a promo area, one, is it necessary for initial education? I would make the argument of no. But over the last several months, we've watched in your primary location, your play space has reduced significantly, and more so even recently, But that was actually going to be my question, is that do you see a need for going back to having events at all?
I don't. I mean, I've made myself unpopular in the past by telling people you don't need a play space. Don't get me wrong, I've got nothing against them, but the idea that I cannot have a game store without having a successful game space, I've always thought was incorrect. It can add, it can benefit you, but it's not required for what you do. New people coming in want to learn about the game. You know, the ironic thing is most of the people that come in now and say, so talk to me about your event space. When are you going to put more tables up? When are you going to start running events? If you stop and watch those people, look, the one thing that I'm noticing from quite a few of them is, A, they don't have a bag with any product in their hands, but B, they never even looked around the store. I mean, I've had people that haven't been in the store for a year come back and say, when are you going to be running events? You haven't been here in a year and you didn't think to look around the shop to see what we got in new? You didn't go shopping at all? Because, no, you were just here for the events. And unfortunately, that's the way it was going before the pandemic. So does it make sense to go back into it with that same thought in mind that no, we need to go back and cater even though they're not even shopping in the store. And they're the hardcore fans, but they're not shopping in the store. They didn't even look around the shop. So no, I think that there will certainly be places that do events and do very well. Just like there are places that sell online and have no contact with their customers and do very well. But for my kind of a store, the store that I want where you come in to learn, to help, to see things, to talk to the employees, to discuss your hobby, no, I don't think you have to do events for that to be successful. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying I don't think you have to.
If we walked out to your store right now, and we walked around your primary location here in St. Charles, if we use the analogy that you have of we're here to provide an initial education about the hobby, putting it in grade terms, if I walk into the fantasy shop, how far does my education go? I mean, is this K through 12? That's what I'm curious about, is that how much education am I going to get as a new fan?
I think I would turn it around and say to you, how long do you have to shop here before you think you've got things under control? I know what I want to buy. I know what I should be paying for it. I know when it's coming out. I know what I'm not interested in. I don't need you guys. It's not that I don't like you and don't want you. I mean, if I go down and watch the Cardinals play, I'm assuming I'm a baseball fan, but I don't need you. So how many baseball fans don't bother to go down to the park and pay for tickets and buy overpriced food? They just stay at home and watch it on TV or record it. So I think that it generally takes somewhere in the, almost like college, 3, 4, 5 year period before most people would consider themselves to be graduates and think that they've got things under control. But for that first couple of years, whether it's early on, I've never heard this, I've never played this, I don't know anything at all about it, or, well, yeah, my friend plays it and I wanted to get into it a little bit more. Those first years, that's where the stores come in the most beneficial. That's where people appreciate them most and are willing to support them most.
Are you satisfied, though, with, I guess it's I don't want to ask this in a shitty way.
No, go for it.
But do you feel like you're leaving money on the table?
Absolutely.
Because I mean, I love these stores, right? And to me, the internet is like masturbation. It's easy and I can do it myself, but I would rather have relations with another human being. I buy a lot of shit online, Dave, but I'd rather walk into your store and buy it from you. I really would. But
I've got to say, by the way, that's a wonderful 20 words or less for describing the internet. No, realistically, of course I'm leaving money on the table. I have more opportunity to care for more customers. The question is, do I want to? Even though I don't work the counter anymore, my stores were always built on the idea that, no, we want to have relationships with our customers. I mean, I'm happy to just take their money, don't get me wrong, but I like to talk to them. I like to share with them. And that's what we've tried to build the experience around. So it's not that we don't see that we're leaving the money on the table. It's that we choose to do just that because we're doing what we want to do.
To what degree do you think that you have to what degree do you think that you've successfully established your businesses as that initial education? I mean, do you think that the first time customer comes in and kind of understands that this is for the uninitiated?
I would love to claim that we've done it all along, and of course that would be a lie. Mostly what we're talking about now is stuff we've been discussing the last year or two. We've noticed the trend for fans who simply don't want to be patrons. They don't want to support the business. And God bless them. I love the fact that they're fans, and I love the fact that they care about the industry. But if they're not willing to support me, there's a limit to what I can do to support them. I would argue, though, that, look, we're in our 40th year now, which means we've done something right. Have we made the most money? No, of course not. Have we built up the most market share? No, absolutely not. Have we become absolutely brilliant at everything we do? God, I wish that was the case. But that doesn't change the fact that we've done enough right that we're still here when most of our competitors have passed away.
And you take no joy in that. I mean, I've known you for a long time. You have always been a very much, a rising tide raises all boats sort of guy.
I just sent a message out this morning to somebody that wants to open up a store and wants to talk to me about it.
And you told them don't?
Absolutely. That'll come when we talk. No, the fact of the matter is if you're going to do it, well, then do it successfully. Do it in a way that helps people, that helps yourself, that helps your employees. Don't make mistakes. And that's primarily what I preach when I do my seminars and work with new people. But it's hard. I mean, there's no denying it, but it's still, that's what we want. Let's be successful. Let's have fun. Everybody that's gone out of business in the last 40 years that I've dealt with, no, I'm sad for every one of them. I cry for them all. I wish that hadn't happened to them. Opening up a business and putting it all on the line is the hardest thing you'll ever do, and it's incredibly difficult. I have nothing but sympathy for anybody that tries it.
With the philosophy that you've embraced over the last couple of years, we're your initial education, do you think that is still a viable business model and not have internet sales? Because to me, I think that if the graduate is moving on and buying stuff online, do I even need online sales?
I don't think so. There's no question that there are more graduates than there are incoming freshmen. So not selling to them, not setting my business up to benefit those people certainly limits my potential profits. And again, don't get me wrong, I love these people, but they're not patrons. They're not supporting me any longer. Even if I was successful online, do they think of it as supporting Jeff Bezos? Or do they see it just as a convenience and something that they're taking advantage of?
Well, they absolutely think of it as a convenience that they're taking advantage of.
I don't really want to be that person. I want to have, again, my relationship with my customer, not just be a supplier. So if you come into my store and all you see is shelves with product for you to buy, I haven't achieved what I wanted to do. I want to talk to you about that product. I want to discuss them. I want to show pride in them. I want to help you with them. I don't just want to take your money. So call me naive, but yeah, that's my basic philosophy.
Are you satisfied with the types of relationships and service that your employees are providing to this this freshman class of gamers?
I am. Going all the way back to the very beginning, I tell new employees, this is one of the only places you're going to work where people are going to bring you gifts. You're going to get invited to weddings and graduations because you've become that important a part of people's lives. They spend more time with you than they do with their families in many cases. I can't give that up. I don't want to walk away from that. I don't care if there's a paycheck on the other end. I enjoy that part of the philosophy and the relationships.
Let me ask you, I'm going to change gears here. Have you been keeping up with what's going on with Gamma?
I have.
because there's a specific subject that I want to discuss with you. But
it's been very interesting. They've gone through a lot of changes this year. The single biggest change is that they are trying to steer away from representing just manufacturers. The organization, Game Manufacturer Association, has always represented them. Now, they've allowed retailers and distributors to join, but we're non-voting members. We have no power or say within the organization. And for the first time, they're suggesting that maybe that's not right. Even though there are more retailers than there are manufacturers.
By a pretty large margin.
That doesn't mean that we shouldn't invite them to participate as real members of the organization. So it's very revolutionary for them. But I think it's a good sign. I think that we as a entire industry can do better than 1/3 of that industry can manage on their own.
Well, to me, the remarkable thing is that for years, people have wondered, aside from being an expo, aside from running the, few-day convention annually, what is the purpose of the organization? And I think that with all of the upheaval this year, they really have put forth effort to determine what is our focus and how do we help the retailer in the industry.
I agree with that. Prior to this, they put on the Gamma Trade Show and they put on Origins. And that was really about what they did. Technically, they represented our industry. And for people that don't know, it's not fair to assume that's all they did. They've gotten involved in legislation. Lead figures, can we make them? Are they a hazard to children? What about bad publicity stories that come out, Dungeons and Dragons, being satanic, etc.? No, they've gotten involved in a lot of ways, but they've always done it with the understanding that it was strictly the manufacturers. Their board was made up of manufacturers. It was voted on by manufacturers. Retail and distribution got a seat at the table. But again, that was it. That was the most representation that we had. And I think that they've come to understand that that's limited, that God bless the manufacturers. I like most of them, and I think they do a wonderful job. But why not accept help when other people are out there willing to offer it? So it's taken some upheaval on their part, but I think they're going down the right path, and I think they'll benefit from it.
I agree with you, except for one subject. The word gamer. Did you pay attention recently? What the actual fuck, Dave? The word gamer is not offensive at all. Number one. It's the opposite of offensive. It is a moniker that I adopt. It is a tribe that I chose. I was not born into being a gamer. I became a gamer because I love fucking gaming. And the idea that a game on every table, a table for everyone, is a fallacy on two counts. One, it's not a table for everyone. This is gamers. It's the gaming industry. It's for gamers. It's by gamers. It's not for fucking everybody. It's for gamers. Number one. Number two, I challenge Gamma to explain to me how they're having a table for everyone. There are billions of people on this planet. Gamma's not making a fucking table for all those people.
Okay, welcome to the retail world. This is going to sound bad. I'm going to acknowledge that before I say it. Gamma doesn't represent gamers. Even with their new effort at reaching out, they still represent the industry. Gamers just happen to be the people that they deal with.
Well,
they haven't invited gamers to join the table.
Like saying the NFL doesn't care about football fans. That's not their focus.
That's pretty much the same, yes.
Oh, my God, you're breaking my heart, Dave. Now, so walk me, I'm not a bright man. You know this. You've known me for years. Walk me through how this fucking works.
Well, again, when we were retailers, we were told the same thing. Yes, you're a part of the industry. Yes, you represent most of the sales. Yes, you're absolutely necessary for us. But we don't represent you. We don't talk to you, and you're not welcome to take a seat at the table.
Now, if somebody had the audacity to say that to my fucking face, I'm building a guillotine. Because I'm French German, Dave. I'm from two people who put up with a lot of shit until we can't put up with any more shit.
My sister became the first treasurer or secretary, I think, for the retail division when the organization created itself.
And this is Wendy Wallace.
Wendy Wallace. So we've been with them the whole time. I've served as chairman of the retail division on a number of occasions. I have been able to sit at the main table. But again, I'm a token. I'm not actually a member of the organization. I had no right to vote for anybody on the main board. That's simply the way things were. I didn't say I liked it, and I think that they're making progress and they're moving in the right direction, but they still see themselves as a trade organization, not as an open convention.
No, I understand that, but the idea, I mean, there are so many things wrong with not being allowed to use the word gamer anymore, but the idea that they actually took time, put forth effort, and voted on this thing because somebody got their underpants all chapped up in their butt because they thought gamer was an exclusionary word. What an asinine waste of time and resources. I mean, it's just fucking stupid.
And yet that was a step forward.
Now now you're breaking. But you know what? I'm canceling my Gamma. I'm out. I'm no longer a Gamma. I'm kidding. I love Gamma. I always loved Gamma. I think it's wonderful, and I think it gets a bad rap because they have really, really poor press outreach and market. They have bad messaging.
It's not much different from Black Lives Matter. It's part of the civil rights struggle. You try to make what progress you can, where you can, when you can, in what ways you can. You're not going to throw a light switch and get it all to be perfect tomorrow.
No, I get that. I really do. And it's easy for me as the outside observer to look at it this way. But there seems to me in this specific instance to be a real serious lack of critical thinking.
Well, you asked me earlier, am I leaving money on the table by not dealing with the hardcore fan that doesn't need to come into the store anymore? You could just as easily be saying that about Gamma. Are they turning their backs on the very people that created the industry that supports them and moves them forward because they choose not to listen to them?
No, they don't need them anymore, right?
Well, to some degree, they don't. I mean, they represent the game industry. What are we selling? Where is the money coming from? And like it or not, that's going to be a few major manufacturers, the ones that make waves, that create the industry, that make the news. So, yeah, of course they tend to favor that part of the industry over the part that, look, remember me, I'm the beating heart of your company that actually likes games and goes out and promotes them and teaches them to other people. Well, God bless you, you're wonderful, you're a great missionary, but you don't necessarily have much to do with our business model anymore.
And yet, Gamma's putting forth more effort to try to get people into the fold and create value to the organization.
As I say, you take your improvements where you can find them.
Well, here's the question. Is this a symptom of poor enrollment and membership, and they're changing the organization because people are not joining? Or is it a symptom of, we actually recognize that for years as an organization, we could provide more value, therefore we're going to try to put forth more value?
Well, you could also ask the question, are they not in the same boat that I'm talking about? Yes, you're right. Those are the people that joined Gamma, that helped build Gamma up, but how many of them just don't need Gamma anymore?
Yeah, does Travis Severance need Gamma?
I would argue not.
Now, I would argue that Gamma needs Travis Severance.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that we can learn from each other, we can benefit from each other, but that's assuming that the members are patrons, not just members. Gamma generally measures this based on who paid dues, where I would, as you said, make the argument that having somebody like Travis out there talking about what to do, what not to do, where we should move forward, that's what you should be focused on. That's the value that you create. But a lot of the old-timers are either gone or look, why should I pay the dues? I already go to the show. I already know what you're going to tell me. I don't see any benefit from it. I'm not anti-Gamma. I just choose not to spend my money with them when I don't have to. I don't have to give money to the Red Cross, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't. That doesn't mean that I don't want to support them. So I think Gamma is a great organization. I think that if you're going to get value, that's probably the place to get the value from. But I also think that, look, the bean counters are still looking at how many people paid dues this month, not what are we doing for the industry.
Right, because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's always about that bottom line, right?
Unfortunately, normally. I mean, if you can't be here next year, well, we appreciate your joining in, but you won't be here next year. We can't count on you. So, yes.
Well, that concerns me, too, because, Gamma has announced that the convention, that the Gamma Expo next year in 2021 will be digital. How many people aren't just going to bother?
Too many, I'm afraid.
I mean, online conventions suck. That's not my thing, whatever. Now, I'll attend because I'm interested and yada yada. But boy, I think a lot of people who like to go to Reno to enjoy the show and see other people and press the proverbial flesh, just not going to care.
Unfortunately, I agree with you. And the question becomes now, can Gamma survive a year without a show? And that's questionable. It was a large part of their budget. Can they adjust and still offer something of value to people? Or is it just, let's see if we're still here in the following year?
Well, I think if we have, I see, so June, I think Origins is the issue. I think that's our linchpin that we look at, right?
That's their other big money maker. Theoretically, there'll be enough of the vaccine around. I mean, we won't be done with it. The virus will not be gone. But can they get away with holding the show at that time? I agree with you. And of course, they have to make the decisions well before then. It's not like they can wait until the first week in June and say, okay, let's do this. So I fear probably won't have it, or we're having it, but we're limiting the number of vendors and events.
If there isn't a convention season and I can't get out and physically, personally promote a show, I have to get a fucking job. Like a jobby job. And that's stupid. I don't want to get a jobby job.
Again, welcome to everybody's world.
I'm 45 years old, Dave. I'm done working. I don't want to work anymore. I don't want to do it.
I'm 62 and I feel the same way.
Well, okay. Well, let's transition into that now. I heard a rumor that, let me rephrase that. Years ago, when I was working for you, as general manager of the company, you and Kelly were on the road. Now, a little bird told me that you guys were thinking about going back on the road again.
Yep.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, if you were capable of surviving 2020 to the point where you're comfortable going back on the road, that's a coup, right? I mean, that's significant.
Well, it needs to be recognized that, first off, at my age and in my health, look, I need to get away. I need to lower the stress levels. I need to distance myself. But as you know, in the last 40 years, Kelly and I probably spent 15 of them away from St. Louis. So we're not wealthy. We don't do great. We're not going out and dropping money all over the place. But we knew what we wanted, and we focused on that idea of getting it. So we've lived in an RV. We lived down on the beach in Florida. We lived out in the mountains in Colorado Springs. So this is nothing new for us. I mean, my preferred choice would be somebody just comes along and relieves me of the stores and buys them from me. And ideally, that would be an equity firm that wants to pay me lots of money for the privilege. But since that doesn't seem to be happening, well, we're making other plans. So when you were here, the idea was, no, you are going to run the company. We are going to be afar. That's not panning out now, but that doesn't mean that we can't still get away. We won't go back to the same setup, but we'll do something similar. We've been working very hard to train our managers to be able to survive and do their job properly. We think we've reached that point where, no, we could do most of what we're doing long distance, and the company won't suffer for it.
And despite the fact that you and I have had our butting of heads over the years, one thing that I have always had tremendous admiration for you about is the autonomy that you provide to your employees. I never felt micromanaged or constrained. Second guessed, sure, but I never felt micromanaged, right? And I always felt like you trusted not just me, but my judgment and concerns of the employees, what the employees were doing, and having left and worked in quote unquote real corporate America breaks my heart because you're just a thing, right? You're just a piece. You're easily replaceable, and you have almost no autonomy, and it's just terrible. I can't work like that.
Well, again, we talked last time, bad management promotes more bad management. People don't think well of management, but that's because all they've ever gotten used to is bad management. Good management isn't supposed to do that. People should want to get into good management. It means learning. It means growing. It means stretching your muscles and trying things you haven't tried. It should be self-perpetuating, but unfortunately, again, we go back to bad management is what's self-perpetuating. So if I have to do your job for you, if I have to micromanage, then that's bad management on my part. I set myself up for failure, and I shouldn't be surprised when it comes around. So I would argue that our managers right now are as good as I've ever had. I think that they are intelligent and capable. I think that they can make decisions for themselves. My job as their manager is to be a catalyst to help that to happen. So I do have faith in them. I'm not going to walk away and wait for things to fall apart. I'm going to move away because I want to and I need to. But that doesn't mean that we're giving up. That doesn't mean that the managers aren't doing the job. We should be able to move ahead.
And you're going to leave John in charge?
In charge? No. John doesn't want to be in charge.
Yeah, well, I mean, because it sucks.
That was the difference between you and him. He recognizes his limitations, but also what he wants to do and what he doesn't want to do. So I'm not going to ask him to do something that he doesn't want to do.
Again, that is something that I have tremendous appreciation and respect for, because a lot of employers would not do that. They would want to push somebody into doing something because it is convenient for them.
And most companies don't make it very long. No, the reality is that we'll work within the constraints of what our managers want and what they don't want. And we'll find methods that allow us to communicate and stay in the loop. And that's what we've been working on nonstop these last few years.
I'm going to go back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier, prior to the recording. One of the subjects that you had brought up was product flow, right? You even talked about it when you were talking about inventory, costs, etc. And our conversations kind of blurred from what we were recording and what we weren't. But I'm curious. You were saying that you have seen the release schedules. Kelly just held up a sign over your shoulder that said, "But someone should buy us out."
And that would be preferable.
Yeah.
No, realistically, going back to the 80s when I opened up the shop, there weren't very many comic or game stores out there. And part of the reason you could succeed was because if people wanted the product, there were only a few places where they could buy it. But that started to evolve in the 80s. Looking at comic books first, we would go from getting in 40 or 50 new comics a month to getting in 200 or 300 or 400 new comics a month. Eventually you got up to 800 comics a month being offered. So if you went to Las Vegas and you played roulette and there were only 4 numbers on the wheel, your odds of winning were pretty good.
Yeah, I'm going to kick ass.
But if you go to Vegas and play roulette and there are 100 numbers on the wheel, your chances of winning have dropped off dramatically. It's still the same game. It's still played the same way, but we've introduced so many potential ways for you to lose that it becomes very hard. So the same thing in this year, we've had an abundance of comics, games made available to us in the last few years. I mean, we're having more games offered to us in a week than we used to have offered to us in a month or even a season. And that's not even talking about Kickstarter and everything going on there. So if you have X number of dollars to spend, let's assume that you have $50,000 to spend, but you're being offered $150,000 worth of choices, it's easy to make mistakes. But because of the pandemic, the lack of events, the lack of a convention season, the economic conditions, literally even shipping product in. I mean, WotC can't even get product shipped in from overseas properly anymore. The number of options available to us stores has gone down. It's still the gaming industry. We still want to get into lots of stuff. We want to be able to take care of our customers, but there's just fewer options open to you now, which means the odds that you got it right are better than they were before. And I think there are a lot of the stores, that's what they're finding. It's not that their sales are up, their sales are down, but their profits are up because their inventory cost has gone down. They're having more luck on the stuff they do buy, where a year ago it wasn't that certain.
Yeah, see, and that's why your current idea of being an education for the new consumer is interesting to me, because in that scenario, you don't have to have as broad a product mix, but potentially a deeper product mix, right? So I have Catan, but I don't have 2 or 3 copies of Catan. I have a big mountainous Catan display for the holiday shopping season. I have the old classics. I have, the top 20 of Board Game Geek's top 100, et cetera, that sort of thing. And then that way you don't have to worry about if a billion new products come out during the course of the year. It's going to be very challenging to figure out which ones are going to be the hits and which ones aren't. But it's easy to figure out ultimately which ones are going to be the evergreens.
Yeah, going back 30, 40 years ago, I did have it all. I mean, every new comic that came out, every new game that came out, every new supplement or module that came out for Dungeons & Dragons, all the miniatures that were available, I carried them all. Not even the online guys can do that anymore. The amount of space and the amount of labor tied up into trying to carry some miscellaneous miniature from 4 years ago simply isn't worth it any longer. And if they haven't learned that, they will learn that. So we want to we want people to think that, boy, you guys have everything. No, not even close. It's impossible to do that. I could buy a mall and still not be able to stock all the product that I'm being offered right now. So it comes back to presentation. Do you have the thing that I'm interested in? Do you know it well enough to talk to me about it? Not do you have everything under the sun so that I can find whatever I want here whenever I want it. So online, you can try. In the store, no.
How do you pick? How do you figure out what product you're going to bring in and then in what quantities when you have limited budget, limited space, but also your business model is focused on these are the things that I want to get for the new consumer?
And you're absolutely right. In order to be able to make an intelligent choice and bring in the best opportunity for me to sell something, I would have to have a staff that really paid attention and knew what they were doing. And that's who we want to be. So this is not a question of, some manufacturer just put out 25 more miniatures. Do we want to buy them all? No. What are the miniatures? How do they look? Who's buying that stuff? How much space do I have? How much quantities do I want to bring in? The hard part for a buyer first is knowing how much to spend. But that's actually the easy part.
So the hard part's the easy part?
Yeah. What are you spending it on? So I could go out and buy $50,000 worth of one game. I spent the right amount of money, but I obviously spent it very badly in terms of I'm not going to be able to sell those and we got stuck with those. So it's the second part. How do you know what to do? And that's why it's so important that my staff, my employees, really learn about the product. If they don't know the product, then they can't help. They can't offer advice. And I think that that's something that we've gotten better at, partially because fewer customers, pandemic, more time to be able to look at it and talk to each other. But in the end, the guy working in your warehouse at a internet business obviously doesn't have the expertise to be able to offer you advice on what to buy. That's the difference between us and them.
Has there been a second round of government assistance?
No. Originally, I got no assistance of any kind. Then I did get a PPP loan, which, ironically, I was supposed to have paid off 6 months ago, but the government's dragging its feet and refuses to allow me to.
Well, how does that work?
They don't know what they're doing. They've never done this before. So they've arranged for some of the businesses that got PPP money to put in an application and get the money forgiven. But for most of the rest of us, it's still coming. We'll get back to you.
Oh, it's a debacle.
Yeah, I cannot do anything with it. They will not allow me to do anything with it. But we also got some of the loan money, which, yes, was useful, yes, was important. Technically, it becomes a loan, and I have to start paying money on it. But again, they don't know when, what, or how they're doing it. So I've already been making interest payments on it, but I haven't been able to actually start paying it off at all.
On the principal?
On the principal.
Oh, that seems like a scam.
And they have not done anything since then. Everything else has been about the states, the unemployment, the hospitals, the healthcare workers, small business-wise. No, nothing since. And you probably saw Steve Mnuchin was being grilled over taking $440 billion worth of money that was supposed to go to business and sequestering it away and saying it's no longer available. So at this point, to the best of my knowledge, they don't even have any intentions on coming back and doing anything new with the businesses.
Yeah,
Yes.
It actually dumbfounds me. It really, really dumbfounds me.
Welcome to business.
All right, so I do have one more subject that I want to tackle, and it is not gaming related, so if you are only caring about gaming, I could tune out. But, so comic book distribution. I know last time we were together, we talked about how DC Comics was shifting their distribution from Diamond, the comic book monopoly, to doing other distributors, and you were kind of filling me in. So what's the situation now? Because there's only DC has one distributor now instead of two?
Yeah, it's very unknown. I mean, we're all just seeing it as it comes out. Originally, DC Comics was bothered by Diamond not shipping. So they simply decided that they would go to new distributors. So they went to two companies, Lunar and USC, who are actually UCS, who are actually retailers. They're online deep discounters. And they said, congratulations, you're now distributors. Now, what kind of a deal they made, nobody ever said. Obviously, nobody was doing this out of the goodness of their heart. So they actually made a special deal with the retailers, deep discounters out there. And that wouldn't have been so bad, except they also said, and we're cutting all ties with Diamond. Which, why? I mean, Diamond's been carrying your product for the last 30 years. Why would you cut all ties with them? But they did. They just said, that's it, we're done. We're never going to deal with Diamond again. And that literally happened overnight. I mean, Diamond found out about it probably the same day I found out about it. Now, since then, they've dropped one of those two new distributors. Lunar is now the only people in the country carrying DC comic books as of the end of this year. And again, this came out basically overnight. Why they did it, nobody ever went into. But as a result, we're back to there's only one place now to get your books from. And not only do they have monopoly, but they're also a retailer who deep discounts the product. Their parent company. But again, nothing was said. I mean, UCS put out a statement saying we want to thank them for allowing us this opportunity, but never said why they were getting out, why they were being forced out. We don't know.
I was going to say, I don't know, but my gut is that they shit the bed and DC told them to bugger off.
Obviously, that would be what you would assume, but since nobody's saying, we don't have any way of knowing. But there has been a little bit of just cracks. Some small publishers now saying, we're going to look for other ways to distribute our books other than Diamond. Now, they haven't said Diamond can't carry our books, but they have announced that they're looking for other options. And to be honest, I don't think there's much to this. Dollar-wise, I don't think it makes much of a difference. And these are companies that may or may not be here in another year or two. I think that had more to do with the fact that, hey, look, we just got 15 minutes of fame by saying we're looking at other distributors. But it does raise the question of, yes, but if you're sitting on Marvel's board or Image or Boom or one of the other larger publishers, do you now feel that you have to start looking for other options? And what would happen to Diamond as a distributor? I mean, forget it as a monopoly, just as a distributor. If any of the large manufacturers announced that they were going to go elsewhere. So we have no reason to believe that that's going to happen. On the other hand, Diamond already had a heavy infrastructure in place to pay for comic distribution when Diamond or DC was with them. They're still carrying those costs. So while they're trying to save money, they're also, I'm going to say it as politely as I can, they're willing to go out and basically pimp for anybody else's books if it means that they can get more sales to make up for what they lost. So as a result, I think the retailers are now under a great assault in terms of Diamond putting as much pressure behind a fourth-rate book that won't survive 6 months as they would have a major DC title back when they were still in control. And I think that's going to make it very difficult for retailers to figure out where to put their money.
Yes, I hadn't even considered that. I just had this sort of Pollyannish, competition breeds excellence, and that, other distributors are going to come in and it's going to force it's going to force Diamond to up their game, right? And to just be a better distributor.
I don't think a lot of retailers appreciated that through the years that Diamond had a monopoly, they in some ways used the monopoly well. Because if you wanted to sell a book, look, there was nothing to prevent you from publishing a book. Anybody has the right to do it. But they were the only people that could distribute your book. And that meant if they refused to distribute, you weren't going to be successful. And that meant that they generally put rules in place that said, well, Mike, if you want to publish a book, well, yeah, but you have to actually have 3 issues done and in the bin for us to see. You have to go out and promote the book. You have to show us that you'll be able to follow up with it. If you can't do those things, well, then we will decline to distribute your book, which means you may as well not bother to do it. Now, we need to sell books. We would rather sell good books. We don't want to change our standards, but the fact of the matter is if you're willing to pay for it, you better believe we'll put a full-page ad in. We'll put every, best, newest, glossiest, finest thing attached to it, and we'll encourage every retailer to buy it. But is that in the retailer's best interest or even in the reader's best interest? I don't think so.
I would absolutely agree with you. I don't think it's certainly in me, the reader's best interest, but also as someone who used to sit around this conference table and do order meetings, just make me want to pull my eyes out. There's just so much garbage we have to sift through and waste money on.
Imagine if I said to you, good news, we're going to see 300 new pots being offered on the television, and they're going to have, this is the slickest, smoothest cooking utensils. Is that really doing anybody a favor? Do we really want to see 300 more medications being broadcast to us on television nonstop? There's a point where well, good for them, and I'm glad they did that. But there's also a point where you exceed that and get back to, really? You got to be kidding me.
Yeah, you become so a glut for choice that you just can't make a decision, and yuck.
But again, I don't think a lot of retailers quite understood that they were protected from that because of Diamond having a monopoly. And now that they don't have a monopoly, let's just say that the gates are open and there's a lot of stuff coming through the gates that shouldn't be.
But Diamond was, and this is just my speculation, but Diamond was the only game in town, so to speak, for a very, very long time, because comic book distribution is hard. It's a difficult thing.
It's not just that it's hard. You got to remember that when this all started back in the 90s, Marvel and DC announced that no, they were going exclusive with Diamond. It wasn't that there can't be other distributors, but good luck doing it without Marvel or DC. So whether it was too hard or not didn't matter if 80% of the potential sales are out of your hands.
So I don't care if it's the easiest thing in the world, we're not doing business with you.
Yeah, there's just not enough money left to justify it in anybody else's mind.
Man, I wonder what Geppy, I'd love to be a fly on the wall of his office. I really would.
I honestly, I have a lot of respect for the man, and I think that he probably makes a lot of really good choices. But I think that he's in a difficult position right now. I hope that he's out talking common sense and encouraging the other publishers that, no, we've got this. It's okay.
Dave Wallace, it seems like you and your ilk have made the best you can out of a bad situation for 2020.
I think we've done as well as we can.
Well, Dave, I have had a blast today, and I hope that maybe in another 6 months we can do this again and talk about the state of the industry. I'm very, very sad that we will not be in Reno together in a few months, sharing dinner and talking about the state of things, but maybe 2022.
Absolutely, no question.
Although odd number years are better for me than even number years. But Dave, again, thank you so much. I want to do this again in the future, but thank you for your time, sir. It's very much appreciated.
My pleasure, and I hope it goes well.
Why We Game is a production of the Influence Foundation. All rights reserved. Audio editing by Brodor. Music by Owen Godwin.